The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is...
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in a popular and hopefully not so popular franchise. Today we are talking about Friday the 13th, Part 2. John, after the first one, were you excited to get back to Camp Blood?
I was curious to get back to Camp Blood more in that how would we do that? Because everyone involved
of this movie
is dead. So how did they find a way to get us back into Camp Blood?
Which was obviously the initial pain of getting the script going. So we had no Tom Savini. We had no Sean Cunningham, probably a few others. But a gentleman by the name of Stephen Miner stepped up to the plate and said, you know what? I got a great idea. Yeah. And he did. He did have a good idea.
Part 1 came out. Huge boffo box office, as they say. People loved it. And so the studio, Paramount, was like, hey, that's great. Can we do it again? Do a sequel. And Sean Cunningham was like, how? Then we kind of mentioned that Jason kid. I'm like, yeah, but that wasn't what? And
that was a dream.
Yeah. And so they got Ron Kurz to write it. Ron Kurz did some touch-ups and additional writing on the first one. And God bless that man, because he has said that he thinks the first one is garbage and did not care for it when he was doing it. And then they went, hey, do you want to do another one for money? And he went, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. Because that's what you do.
He's a working man.
He's a working man.
Yeah.
So Sean Cunningham and Tom Savini was like, it asks way too much of you to make all these leaps for the second one to even work. And yeah, it does. It totally does.
Absolutely does. And, you know, Tom Savini did okay, obviously. Went on to do the Burning, I believe, which he does say was a Friday the 13th knockoff, which is still kind of funny to me. That's got
to feel pretty good though. Like if you're like, this thing that like I helped make iconic. Oh, you want me to do like a rip of that? Yeah. I can do my own work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then I did notice when I was looking up Sean Cunningham, he went on to, instead of directing more in the franchise, he went on to do, among other things, Deep Star 6.
Yes.
Which is just one of those VHS box covers that's burned on my brain as a kid. Yeah. You know, that was definitely up there with like DEFCON 4 and I hate to say it, but a movie called Lunch Meat, which I've never seen, but I remember the box cover really well. But there was something about that Deep Star 6 box cover that is so fascinating. And I guess I had forgotten that he had done that too. So
it's very bizarre how they got people back to this camp. I'm going to eat my words as we go further, but as it stands right now, to me, in a series where a character will eventually be going to hell, be going to space, some ridiculous ass stuff, this is the largest leap. More than like, and maybe I'm just numb to it because, like, you know, the Leprechaun's been in space by this point. All these things.
Sure.
But the idea of like, well, everyone is dead, but we're going to revive this main character in a way that doesn't make any sense, and we're going to tell the same story again. The leaps you have to make in order for any of this to make sense is kind of ridiculous, but okay.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, you brought up a good point before we started recording about how this is kind of like an episode 1 to a pilot type of thing, which fits along with that idea.
Yeah,
you know,
they're like, we did some recasting and we got some stuff we can use, but the plot of it doesn't make much sense compared to what happened in the first one.
Right,
because in the first one, it's that Jason is dead. At the end, she has this dream that maybe Jason isn't dead. But in this one, it says, no, Jason absolutely never died.
Right.
Which, frankly, I mean, that really undercuts Pamela Voorhees' whole thing.
Right. Come on. Yeah. I mean, that does say, like, you know, I bet there are comics out there or something like that does, like, you know, the prequel years where, you know, is Pamela, like, taking care of Jason in the woods or something. But is that still okay for her to just like run out and kill teenagers when she said you allowed a poor boy to drown type of thing?
Yeah.
Again, not doing this on a like poking holes in it, but more on a, okay, this is what you guys are doing.
Right.
And this is a thought exercise, which is how I prefer to approach all of these franchises. Sure. Yeah.
In my preferred version of it, because he still very much loves his mom. So his mom did take care of him, but also in her mind, he was dead. So,
right. Oh man.
Well, no, so she was still like, it was more just her grief made manifest in him. So she'd be like, well, I can't buy you a Christmas gift because you're dead, but I will love you and dote on you all the same. And I can only see you here in the woods.
You have to live in the shack. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't take you into town because people will see me talking to a dead kid. And that'd be weird.
The production went to shooting 4 months after the first one came out, which I'm just completely fascinated by that kind of stuff.
That is wild.
I mean, I've not done things to this scale, but just knowing, like, it takes me a couple of months just to mount a basic production, let alone a feature. So,
well, it very much seems like that the studio was, it just, Control C, Control V, make it happen. Like, just, you did it, just do it again. Change, just change people's names and call it good.
Yeah, and as much as we make fun of that kind of stuff, I always have to say, but I'm a mark for that. So just I'm part of it. Yeah. So yeah, they got everybody back together, went out to the woods, and shot another one in 41 days. So I guess we can talk about the opening, which is pretty important, even though it does kind of replay the entirety of the first movie, or at least. Excuse me, is it just the ending kind of sequence?
It's largely the ending sequence. It's her just it's Alice in somewhere in a house somewhere, just like sleeping and fitfully dreaming of her final moments of murdering Pamela. Well, murder is not the right, defending herself against Pamela Voorhees.
Exactly. Yeah, not quite to the extent of Phantasm 2, which recounts the entirety of Phantasm 1, which I kind of love, and we will get to. Is that a promise? Is that a threat?
Stay tuned.
Yes. But no, it just recounts that because, do all the people in this movie theater now, did they see the first one?
Right.
I don't know. Just show them what they need to know real quick. Kind of like you were saying, like, there's no streaming, Yeah,
there's not like how would you have accessed Friday the 13th Part 1 if you did not see it in the theater? I don't know. I don't know what home video was like at the time, but we don't need to see all of it. But the important thing is why this person would be upset and why someone might be out to get this person.
So yeah, the opening one starts with her in a suburban home that we're not quite aware of where this is, especially in context to the camp. And she's kind of going through a whole what Scream was based on, but I did think of Scream during this, the beginning, the opening kill, the opening former final girl type of thing. And she's just kind of drifting around and the camera's following her in and out of the shower, making you feel kind of gross type of thing.
They reuse some of the effect that I applauded in the last one, where the camera is the stalker, but is also just the regular camera. The moment, particularly where it's like following her around and she goes into her bedroom and gets changed and the camera just is sitting outside. It's very uncomfortable, that pause. Right. It makes you feel like you're in the scene. You're like, why aren't we cutting? Why aren't we going anywhere? And then, then she goes into the shower and the camera follows her in the shower, and like Psycho style, the curtain gets pulled away and she's just staring right down the lens. Because the phone rings. And so she pulls the curtain away. And it's very uncomfortable because you're just like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm watching you shower.
I'm sorry, I'm in your house. Your phone's ringing.
Apparently, according now, this is not canonical because this is from the novelization and of 2, and those aren't canonical because there's 2 novelizations of Part 3. I discovered. And I will be reading both of them.
I was gonna say, right to eBay right now.
She returned to Crystal Lake. She rented a home near Crystal Lake because her parents simply didn't understand what it took was going back to where it had all happened. The camp itself had been shut down and the buildings had all been condemned. But she came back to the town of Crystal Lake where people did not know who she was since her picture had been kept out of the papers when it happened.
How are there 2 versions of Part 3?
I guess
know. We'll get to that next episode.
That will be the majority of the episode.
I'll read one and you'll read one and we'll compare notes.
You've got it all wrong again, according to this text.
So, she jumps on the phone. She talks about trying to get her life back together. Yeah. She's walking around and, again, not to harp on this or dwell on the truly horrific, she did have her own experience with a stalker during this time, and it makes you kind of like shudder a little bit. It was just like her trying to get her own life back together.
Yeah, when you know that aspect of it, that scene is very, very much more uncomfortable.
And then she drifts into the kitchen and she opens the fridge door after a cat jump scare.
Love a good fake cat jump scare. Always
And
good.
she finds the head of Pamela Voorhees in the fridge, immediately turns around and takes a ice pick to the side of the head.
That is
which
brutal.
Evidently did not retract the first take. And my goodness, if you're the props person, like I make mistakes. I'm a video producer. I make mistakes all the time. They don't involve ice picks to the head.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a little rough for her to get like stabbed in the side of the head and then say like, okay, back to one. Let's do this again.
Sorry, we'll get it to retract this time. Now I'm starting to wish, because I just watched Jackie Chan's Police Story, and now I'm starting to wish that this ended with a montage of misfired stunts.
Oh no!
Like Jason having to apologize to people, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
That axe didn't go in your head right. Sorry."
Yeah, and I do believe there's a bit of trivia about this first Jason.
Oh yeah. The first Jason you see is in fact a woman, because you only see Jason's legs.
Feet.
Ellen Lutter, the costume designer, they had her stand in for Jason's legs, because I don't think they had specifically cast a Jason in this. There are two different Jasons in this one.
Right, which also we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but if we're going to talk about her contributions, she's not only the first person to play Jason as the killer like that, but she also came up with the Baghead look.
That's
too.
right. Yeah.
So, I mean, say what you will about it not being the hockey mask and all that. I still find it really creepy, completely. So she came up with that as well.
I never watched this movie when I was a kid. All I knew about Jason was the hockey mask. And I remember being at some slumber party in like second or third grade or something, and like goofing around and putting a pillowcase on my head, and it bothered one of the kids. Like, no, it's like Jason the second one. And I was like, what do you do? Jason wears a hockey mask. Like, no, and this one he wears a pillowcase. And it's like, can he even do that? Is that legal? that absolutely can't happen. But it scared me so bad.
Right. And it's still, I don't know, there's something kind of unsettling about it too. That really works for me.
I mean, I don't know if it was directly lifted from The Town That Dreaded Sundown, but that's certainly
I absolutely think that's it.
Certainly an influence on that.
Yeah, especially with the pitchfork eventually and stuff like that. The cap to the scene is that the tea kettle goes off and Jason Voorhees takes the tea kettle off the burner, which I kind of
like.
And
it works. It works as Jason as protector, because that's what he's about.
Yes.
Like he's getting vengeance for his mom, who loved him, I guess, until she just ignored him.
Yeah.
But also like, hey, I don't want anyone. There's no reason a fire needs to happen. And he only just kills people that are coming onto his sacred ground. So he's just looking out for areas.
I do also enjoy the fact that he's a practical jokester, because why did he put his mom's head in the fridge? Just as like a bit of a gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, or, it could just be where he had the head with him. And that's how he found out where Alice lives. Because there's really no way that he would know, how did he track Alice down? And you could either, as we say, decide this to be like a CinemaSins, like whoopsie, or take this opportunity to fill in the blanks for yourself.
Which I enjoy.
I don't think the scriptwriter meant for you to do that. I just think they did not care. But you can take this opportunity to do that.
So Jason's holding his mother's head aloft like a torch, like a lantern, walking through this suburban neighborhood, like waiting for the light to shine on the proper...
Yeah. Beams out of the eyes.
I just wrote a 6-series Netflix in-betweeny type of show where we have to explain everything.
Explain absolutely everything. Otherwise, it's like I mentioned Victor Miller saying in the first one, like, why let logic get in the way of a good movie? And absolutely.
Right, exactly.
But sure, why not? So his mom is telling him where to go, and he gets there, and he's like, well, I better have my hands free to do murdering properly. I don't know where to put your head, Mom. And Mom's like, it's kind of hot. Put me in the fridge. So it's,
hey, you got to keep me on ice.
Don't want me to deteriorate, do you, Jason? And he's a good boy. So, yeah.
He's a good boy. He listens.
Yeah, so he was going to kill her whether or not she found the head. I don't,
That's true.
He does, unlike Pamela Voorhees, he does like set up the bodies. With the exception of perhaps Steve swinging down from the, wherever he's hanging at the end of the first one. Jason several times positions bodies in certain ways for them to be found.
Yes.
He's
right.
Yeah, he's much more like a villain from the TV show Hannibal than
he's an artist.
Yeah. He's just expressing it in a strange way.
His tableaus.
Yeah. His flesh.
So yeah, just after the kettle burner, we go to the exploding titles. Friday the 13th,
Beautiful.
Part 2. We are not into the era of individual subtitles yet. Part 2 is
well,
fine.
this actually, I believe, predates Halloween 2 and coming out. Like we're not fully in full franchise mode, but Friday the 13th is one of the movies that is responsible for, or at least a part of, like the 80s being just full of sequels and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like how they set this up. The first one had the Friday the 13th block letters, break through glass. What's the next step? Explosions. So you just have the thing come up, no glass break, and then you just blow it up, revealing part 2. And that got a genuine, like, huge grin from me when I
Absolutely, yes.
I was like, oh, the glass didn't break. Oh, it blew up.
Yes. We'll have to pay attention to part 3. Definitely. The movie proper starts and we get two teens at a payphone, which Crazy Ralph is just jumping on immediately. Crazy Ralph, the harbinger from the first movie. So he tells two teens who he does not know. He does not know that they are camp counselors, that they're just doomed.
I told the others. They didn't believe me. You're all doomed. You're all doomed.
And I just don't know what Crazy Ralph does all day, but tell people they're doomed. And how do you get that job?
Well, I would love that job.
Right.
But it's just been, according to this movie, it's been 5 years since part 1 happened. So that's 5 years of Ralph just like, he can't tell anyone anything. And so when some new people come to town, which is probably not often, he's going to tell them they're doomed.
Out of town plates coming in.
Oh, are you using a phone? Wonderful. You guys are so doomed. Thank you.
You're so
doomed. You know, he does it for free. He does it for love of the game.
Right.
It's like, you're doomed. Now give me some money.
Community service. Yeah.
He's actually paid by the Chamber of Commerce.
By the county, right. Keeps the tourism down.
The Chamber of, we don't like your kind around here.
Right. Yeah. We've got, so all the counselors start to descend back to Camp Blood. We've got, kind of a classic gratuitous camera following a butt shot, and Scott hits it with a slingshot. I mean, probably lifted more artistically from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I'm sure we'll get to, because that's so important and iconic, and not just because of, I don't know, I feel weird just being a dude talking about butt shots in a horror movie franchise, but there's something about the Texas Chainsaw shot that looks and moves in a different way.
Yeah, no, it's because it's technically impressive, because it's a dolly shot that goes like underneath a swing and all this stuff. And in fact, according to we're just going to use this as a vehicle to talk about Gunnar Hansen's book every episode, but he even says that multiple people, I think when Steven Spielberg met Tobe Hooper for Poltergeist, it was like, how'd you do that dolly shot?
Right.
But no, and it's funny because in the last episode I was talking about Jason not being or the killer in the first one not being you had sex so you're dead, more just that like punishing laziness or whatever. Where this one's just like, nope, look at his ass.
Nope.
Look at his caked up butt.
Obviously, Texas Chainsaw did not invent that kind of shot. Of course not. But like that's where my brain went, and it does make me think of that classic case of what we talked about, I think in the Zero episode, of just like the first movie in a series has a certain amount of kind of like, wow, that's an incredibly artistic ambition, even if what you're filming is disgusting. This one's just like, nah, just put the dolly on the track and just follow for a while. Slingshot, please.
And it is kind of this escalation of, because there was absolutely very little characterization in the first one.
Right.
But for the most part, a lot of these counselors are even more plastic and just forgettable. And in fact, there's a whole bunch of them who are credited as extra counselor. They're barely even in the movie.
And later on, we'll get to it, but like half of them just like leave. Yeah. And then
that's
we focus on,
This is not Camp Blood, though. This is not Camp Crystal Lake. This is this one takes place at the Packanack Lodge, which is a different camp on the same lake.
Crystal Lake.
Crystal Lake, Camp Crystal Lake is just down the way. Which, like, for them putting this together in 5 years seems kind of impressive.
Yeah.
Or like, was this already existence like Camp Crystal Lake? But whatever. Also, just interesting. Like, I never went. I just went to day camps when I was a kid. I didn't go to overnight camps, so I don't know how the hierarchy of day camps or these kind of summer camps work. Because it seemed like in the first one, Steve was the owner and also the head guy, whereas this one, it just seems like Paul Holt showed up and is head counselor.
Right.
But there's not necessarily anyone else in charge.
Right. I mean, I went to a few church camps when I was in like elementary school. And I always say that I went to a pretty, looking back on it, I went to a pretty good church to be going to, like as you're a kid in the Midwest, I always say.
Right.
I feel like I was pretty too young and not also caring about the hierarchy. I knew that there were older kids who were looking after me and telling me, don't feed that rat to the snake type of thing.
That would be pretty awesome to be like 6 years old, like rolling in and just being like, oh, what's the management structure here? I bet I could streamline this. Like little boss baby Jim
Johnson, you're gone.
Yeah, you're dead weight.
Right.
Just based on what we see here.
Yeah.
Who do you think, barring murders from a psychotic person, who would run a better camp, Paul Holt or Steve from the first one?
That's a really good question. I mean, Steve had a certain, he had a get up and go. Paul seems a little bit more tossed off, like a little bit more. He does give the speech at the beginning about how this isn't just some fun job.
Yeah.
So I guess he's got a little bit of that too. They're both hooking up with other counselors.
With younger counselors, yes. They're both tremendous creeps. I want to go with Steve simply because, like you said, because Steve's like, we got to build this, we got to do this. So it might be more regimented, but I do think that Paul is a little maybe too lax. He wants to hang out. Because when they have a bunch of them go to the bar, he goes too.
That's true. And Steve goes into town alone in the first one to get stuff done, right?
Although, I mean, perhaps that speaks to the age difference. Maybe Steve is not that much older and is not that much of a creep.
Right.
I'm sorry, Paul is not that much of a creep compared to Steve, but
right.
Definitely, I do very much enjoy because during the scene when you're getting kind of not introduced to the counselors, but you're seeing the counselors all together in the same place, and he's talking to them. His assistant Ginny shows up, played by Amy Steele, who is the heroine of this movie, and she's great.
I think she's great. Yeah,
and their interactions are the chemistry between her and Paul. I think is fantastic. It makes him seem less creepy. Makes it seem like what he's doing isn't awful.
Right.
But no, they're a lot of fun, and for the accusations, correct accusations of the first one trying to just rip off Halloween. I think Amy Steele is much more of a Laurie Strode than Alice ever was. Ginny was more than Alice, because
I think so.
It's not like she's a prude or anything. In fact, that violates the whole I'm chaste so I don't get killed.
Right.
But she's intelligent, hardworking, is her own person. Not that Alice wasn't, but they spend a little bit more time fleshing Ginny out as a character compared to Alice.
I think that's a fair way to put it. I mean, Laurie Strode is definitely always held up as the gold standard type of thing, and so few can compare. And then if you do just have an Alice who maybe is just not as fleshed out as much, I loved her performance, just great.
Yes,
she was working with what she had. Ginny does have a little bit more to work with, I think. And she does feel like she has a little, I mean, I feel like the word agency gets a little overused, but she does stuff a little bit more.
No, she does stuff. That is true. Because I think some of that's part of her doing stuff is prepping you as the audience. And I know that they weren't necessarily intending Jason to be around for a bajillion other movies and whatever.
Right.
But to be okay, well, so we now that we've introduced this new killer, let's contextualize him a bit. And so she just goes off because when she's not a camp counselor, she's studying to be a child psychologist. And so later when she sort of pathologizes what Jason is up to, it's a nice shorthand for I'm just going to guess this is his motivation, and you as the movie are just going to run with it. And so it's fine.
And I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it works. But so it adds her being sort of empathetic and caring, but at the same time getting shit done.
Also smart and resourceful, and a little book smart in there too. So yeah, all of the meetings kind of culminate into a sit around the campfire with all the counselors, and Paul tells us, well, basically he tells the story of retconning the first movie.
I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason. His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned. And if you listen to the old timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there. Some sort of demented creature. Surviving in the wilderness. Full grown by now. Stalking. Stealing what he needs. Living off wild animals and vegetation. Some folks claim they've even seen him. Right in this area.
Yeah, this is basically telling the audience, look, this is what actually happened. Even though you just saw clips of what happened.
Right.
This is what actually went down.
Right.
And it's effective. Like it's a spooky ghost story around the campfire kind of thing. That's interrupted by this movie's pranksters, Ted, taking over for Ned.
Yes. Kudos, writer.
Yeah. Good. Just Control C, Control V.
Yep.
Perfect. But Ted here, played by Stuart Charno, the absolute hero of the movie. Because you have he's the wacky prankster, but he's not doing it in a sort of like desperate attempt to get attention. This is just what he does. At no point does, like in the first one, Ned desperately, he's trying to get that other counselor to notice him, shooting an arrow at her, and then when they're in the cabin, Jack talks about fixing the generator, and he's like, "Oh, look at this macho bullshit. I'm not like that." Ted, on the way out to camp, makes some comment about Paul being into some macho bullshit, but he's not trying to pick up on because he's riding with Jeff and Sandra. He's not trying to pick up on Sandra. He doesn't care about what society thinks, man. Yeah, exactly. And then he's one of the people that goes leaves camp to go get drunk, and when they head back to camp, he's not going back. He's going to stay there and drink.
Exactly.
So hats off. Yeah. And I like in that Memories of Crystal Lake, Stuart Charno talked about he got killed he was supposed to get killed in Christine as well. He got cast Christine. Supposed to get killed, but they cut that scene. So he's like, I don't die well on camera. That's all it is. Which rules. So hats off to Ted, true hero.
Yes. True hero of the movie. Yeah. So yeah, he finishes out that story that Paul's telling, and then I still find it funny that like Paul undercuts his entire story by just being like, no, Jason drowned and Voorhees was killed and it's all over. It's fine. Don't be afraid.
I was just making things worse for no good reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then we just get into kind of the general meat of this kind of stuff where just like, the kids party, they're starting to kind of pair off a little bit. One of them really wants to go see Camp Blood.
Yes, Sandra. Because earlier they found the downed sign when they're driving out with Ted and Jeff. There's a branch across the road, a big heavy branch, and Ted and Jeff move it, and she sees the downed sign for Camp Blood, and it's like, oh, well, what's that? Particularly after hearing the story about it from Paul. Oh, gotta see that Camp Blood. And Jeff less interested, but Sandra uses her feminine wiles, we'll say.
Exactly.
To basically just be like, look, we're going.
We're going there. Yeah. So they head off in the direction of Camp Blood, and then Crazy Ralph wanders onto the camp. Kind of see his hat in a shadow type of thing while he's kind of like watching Paul and Ginny make out behind a tree, and then he's strangled for his voyeurism. From
a standpoint of, I'm seeing the first one, I'm seeing part two. The Crazy Ralph is just Crazy Ralph. He's just kind of this whatever. But if you don't know, it's a nice little way to play on the red herring aspect of it.
Sure.
I remember seeing Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, Part 6, with a friend of mine who'd never seen Star Trek before. And at one point was like, I think that Scotty guy did it. And I was like, there's no way that Scotty did it at all. But something in the movie like made him go, right. I mean, maybe it was the movie. It was just an intense hatred of Scottish people. I don't know. I don't want to.
Right.
But because here's this creep telling people that you're doomed, and like he's back at the cabin, and then they go, "No, it's not him."
Right.
Murder.
Yeah, he gets strangled, I believe, around
a tree, because you don't see who it is that does it, but
because the tree blocks them.
The tree blocks it.
Which, I'm jumping the gun on one of my observations for later, but like Jason looked real small in this movie compared to the massive beast that Kane Hodder is later on.
He's still supposed to be somewhat human in this, I guess.
Exactly. And that's totally fair. And again, I'm not like making fun of it. It's more of just like, this is an observation that he can hide behind a tree. In future films, Kane Hodder's 4 trees.
Yeah.
You know,
he's a damn forest.
Yes. So,
but it is interesting that the first one was much more of a whodunit kind of thing, where these campers were being murdered, but you had no idea who. And this one, they pretty much set up at the beginning. No, it's Jason.
Yeah, it's Jason. And I'm sure it's something we'll talk about quite a lot, especially once we get into Nightmare on Elm Street. But like your villain is Star. Yeah. Like, you know, we're not rooting for Jason, but we're kind of rooting for Jason.
You're rooting for him to do kills, because there's a weird aspect of this where it kind of like towards the end tries to give him some empathy, and particularly as you go forward, I'm curious to see how that fades away or how they deal with that, because it starts being the draw for some of these is like, how's he going to kill people this time?
Of course,
you know, it's less like, oh, I hope he finally gets to sing.
Right.
His soul gets to soar.
Exactly.
No, I don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Crazy Ralph gets dispatched by a tree. Nothing happens to the campers. They're able to party inside. And you also have, again, like Ginny beating Paul at chess, showing she's able and whatever.
Yep.
Ginny and Paul leave, and she wakes up the next morning to Paul having written on the mirror, "Beware of bears." And I'm curious about this because earlier he made a comment about dealing with bears. So ladies, don't wear perfume and stuff like that.
Right.
And clean up if you're having your menstrual cycle. Yeah. So was she having her period? And he was like, "Fix that shit, lady. That's gross."
Ew.
Yeah. I don't understand that message at all.
Must be.
Yeah. Or it was like, hey, good perfume, but you know.
Yeah.
There's a couple of moments in this movie where it's like
Paul just dropped and I want Steve back.
Yeah. There's a couple of moments in this movie where it's like, if you start to think about it at all, it's really upsetting.
Yes, exactly. Right.
I mean, it's a movie about a guy murdering people, so it's all pretty upsetting, but there's somewhere it's just
but
like,
I'm going to focus on this one.
Yeah. Just not going further than that. So yeah, I don't know what that message was supposed to be for, but it was unpleasant.
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right.
But she's touched by it. She's like, oh, you. So yeah, then it kicks off to the next day of, you know, they're making the camp counselors run around and whatever. And this is where Terry's dog, Muffin, this is adorable, just rich lady's dog, basically. I don't know what kind of breed it is, but wanders off and you see it kind of point of view approach a person and the camera looks down, you see feet. And it's clearly supposed to be Jason.
Yeah.
So Muffin has gone missing. And this leads to one of my favorite things.
What, dead Muffin?
Well, eventually, but just that, and I'm always a sucker, like, for stuff like this, where, because you see the dog and then it cuts to hot dog on the grill being cooked.
Oh, yes,
and,
yes.
And
it's such like a Looney Tunes type of thing.
And I love that stuff. And also that Terry, this happens a couple times where Terry's concerned that Muffin is gone. But she's like, Muffin, like, lunch is ready. She's like, well, I love my dog, but I love lunch more.
I like lunch.
So I'm sure it's fine. Or like later when she's looking for the dog, she's like, well, I hope my dog comes back. You know, and I'm just going to get nude right now and go swimming.
Right. Yeah. I just have in my notes, don't do anything to that dog.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Don't touch that dog. It's hard not to jump ahead in the franchise sometimes, but like that's the one thing that Kane Hodder said he would never do as Jason, because I think it was in like Jason Takes Manhattan or something where he was supposed to like hack at a dog and he's just like, nope.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely not.
He's bad. We get it. Like,
yeah, you know, right.
Yeah. But I'm the same way. I was a little bummed by that. You know, that realization, which may not have happened.
We'll get to that here in a second. Gee whiz. Yeah. Then we get some kids getting busted by the cops.
Yeah, well, because Sandra and Jeff wander onto Camp Crystal Lake and they find the eviscerated dog. And they're very blasé about it.
Yeah, that would ruin my week.
That would, yeah. I'm like watching it ruin my week. Like, just like that's. Oh, they're like, oh man, that's. I mean, I don't know how the '80s were about dog murder, but I was a child then. But man, that does not speak well to.
Not
for
okay.
Yeah. And then, yes, they get busted by a cop who doesn't have a name in the movie, but guess what? Novelization here to save the day again.
Hell yes!
Gave him a name.
And then he leaves, and then he sees the figure in the woods, follows it, and I think this is the first time we see the shack.
Jason's
in
shack.
The woods.
Yeah.
Jason's shack, which is very important in this movie. He sees something inside, but immediately takes a claw hammer to the back of the head.
Again, further questions. Was this there? Did he build it? And as someone who lived alone in their 20s, what's wrong with it? It looks fine. There's perhaps not a poster of Master Chief from Halo, but other than that,
have you been to punk houses in Portland in your 20s?
That's normal.
Looks pretty all right.
I guess the surprise is that there's one guy living there.
Right, there's not
rather than
four
like
Jasons.
6. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. If Jason fronted a punk band, that would rule.
Yeah. Where's his unused like bass in the corner? Slam on bassist everywhere.
Take that. Yeah. Like life hasn't already done enough to you.
Right.
Also, because this is something that, and this is absolutely nitpicky, but Jason is rather clean in this. For if the idea that he has been living in the woods just himself, for however many years. Like he's pretty well put together, and that pillowcase is rather nice.
It's doing good for his skin.
Yeah. But I suppose he probably, when he's just tooling around the house, he doesn't wear it.
He doesn't. You don't
wear a tux when you're just reheating some macaroni and cheese or something.
Right. I do. So now we get to like kind of a dinner scene late night where Paul makes the announcement like, hey man, if you want one more night to tie it on, just do it now. And my first thought when I was watching this, again, it's been a while, but I was just like, there's a lot of counselors here. We could have a real slaughter on our hands, like in a little bit. Like this could be a high body count type of thing. No, not quite. But so half of them just like get up and leave and go into town, go to the bar type of thing. I don't know which one I would choose, but
I mean, I would probably go drink. I mean, but it depends because I mean, like as you said, they are kind of pairing off, and so
that's a big part of it.
Vicky is just throwing all kinds of game at Mark, the gentleman in the wheelchair.
Yes,
which is hilarious because in real life that actor was, and this is pretty, astounding for the time, was an out gay man. And she was flirting with him pretty heavily. And he was like, no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no. Well, I can pretend in the movie then.
Right. That's acting.
Yeah.
They take off. Then we get our, a strip down for a night nude swim. The thing that I noticed here was just when she walks into the water, it's clearly the second take because her hair's all wet. And I was just like, oh, you poor girl. You had to like walk in twice at least, if not 3 times. And,
well, there was some behind the scenes stuff. There was like, well, everyone wanted to like, oh, can I just be here to be towel boy or something? Because it does feel like the movie is very much like, this is why you are here. Like, just please get naked.
Right.
Because the same thing again, where it's just like, well, she stays behind. Terry stays behind because she's going to look for Muffin. And until she sees the water, it's like, well, I better slowly get naked and then slowly get into the water.
And as will be, I'm sure, a recurring theme, like, hey, if that actress is totally into that, awesome. Like, all for it. I'd like to believe that it was completely comfortable and exhilarating for her.
Because Scott stays behind as well. He kind of fills in for the prankster thing here because he's already hit her in the butt with the slingshot earlier. Yes. And while Ted is the more overt prankster, Scott kind of fills in because then when she's in there, he takes her clothes and makes her chase him.
Right.
The other people, as I mentioned, Mark and Vicky are in the cabin, and Mark is arm wrestling Jeff. Jeff, who this whole time is dressed like a very sexy Gallagher.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming was a big popular style at the time.
Yeah, so Vicky and Mark are just like, they're playing that slow seduction game here, obviously.
Want to take me on?
Sure. Have a seat.
I only want your fingers.
What?
Of her just hurling slow pitches over the base and him just being like, there it goes.
Then it's intercut with Scott getting trapped in a sling.
Yeah, after he steals her clothes, he runs away and gets caught in a cartoon, like a snare.
Yeah, like a Wile E. Coyote type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Chewbacca watched this movie and went, come on, dude.
Right.
That's embarrassing.
Yes. And he's hanging upside down and he gets his throat slit.
Yeah, she's like, well, I'll cut you down. Let me go away and get a knife. But you got to stop with this foolishness. Yeah, then Jason finds him and so which again, like setting these traps and stuff like that is a little bit more than what Pamela would do.
There you go.
And I was reminded of, it's not quite, but there's a wonderful Killer in the Woods movie called Rituals with Hal Holbrook that I highly recommend. And there's a line in there that I always think about. A lot of careful hatred has gone into this thing. And I feel like that's Jason. Whereas where Pamela just shows up and murders everyone, Jason has set traps. Jason, like, pops up from the covers later.
Right.
He's going to have some fun with this.
There's some careful hatred. I like that. We cut back to Jenny at the bar with a whole bunch of other people. She thinks that, maybe there is a Jason out there, and she kind of gets made fun of by the other counselors. Like, no, there's no such thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, this is where she provides motivation for Jason.
And the only person that ever knew him was his mother. He never went to school, so he never had any friends. I mean, she was everything to him.
Yeah, deranged killer.
No. You're missing my whole point. I mean, I doubt Jason would have even known the meaning of death. Or at least until that horrible night.
He watched his mother get killed.
Right.
Which messed him up, which raises the question of, so he just kind of hung out and watched that happen and went, that was a thing.
Yeah.
And then what? Like, it doesn't make any sense, but fine. And not to get too, like, this is more like the Japanese horror version of it, where it'd be like, well, Jason was dead. Like this entity in the lake now, that his misery is come back to the lake, and he saw that happen. And then like that gave that spirit form or something. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Get weird with it. Like
that's more fun.
The movie does not care how you think it happened. Make up your own thing, because the movie's not going to tell you.
And that's fine too, because like, would we have been more annoyed, like, with some sort of weird explanation, like, especially this early? Yeah. Like later on, we'll get into the explanations, which are all fun, But this early, I just kind of like the genesis, just being like, meh, he's there.
Well, and I think it's just the movie. It has no pretensions about what it is.
Right.
It's like you're just here to see people get murdered.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Exactly.
We have to, like, for the context of the story, we have to kind of wrap something around. But whatever, we'll get to it. Yeah. So we don't need to pay a whole lot of attention to this, and people are like, that's fine. Instead of nerds making podcasts about it.
Right. Exactly. We're back at the camp, and Vicky is getting ready to go back to Mark, and she starts hearing music.
Well, this is where Vicky really screws up. So, because she has left, Sandra and Jeff have gone upstairs to do the horizontal bop. And what I love is that in both scenes, like, and they're intercutting between their upstairs and Mark downstairs. There's only like a couple of cuts, but both times Mark is like looking up at the ceiling as the scene starts. And it's like Vicky is throwing game, and he's like, "Man, I wish it was with Jeff and Sandra. That would rule."
Right.
Mark, what happened? Did you have to be in a chair?
Motorcycle accident. Paralyzed my legs.
Is it permanent?
Doctor thinks so. I don't. I don't intend to be in this thing the rest of my life.
Just your legs, huh? Is everything else okay?
Oh, I do all right. One way or another.
They seal the deal. Let's just find a cabin and go. I'm going to go and grab a couple of things. Fix myself up a bit. And this movie is very much like, ladies, if that happens, go for it. Don't dress up. Just seal the deal, lower your standards, because any kind of like making it fun for you is going to lead to your death.
Making it fun for you, or just like leaving the side of another person.
It's bad news.
We do lead into such a fantastic classic shot of the movie of Mark wheeling himself close to some stairs. Yeah. Machete to the head, rolls downstairs. And it includes one of my favorite Roger Ebert quotes that's ever been done.
Among the movie's low points is a kid in a wheelchair who has his head hacked open by a machete.
What I love is the absurd amount of stairs. Yes. I don't feel like they even really like preface that. They don't hang a lantern on at all. They're just
did
like,
they establish those stairs before?
I don't think they do. I think it's not like, well, I can't go down there because there's far too many stairs.
Right.
It's just he rolls off the porch onto the Great Wall kind of stairs. He just falls into an MC Escher painting, and it's
right.
and like I don't know if they like hot glued him to that chair or whatever, but just like the actor stays on there the whole time.
I would love to know how they do that stunt. Absolutely.
These first two movies, tons of credit for they're loving to stay on so much slow motion.
Yeah.
They do it here, and I want to say maybe they do it one other time, but in the first one, like when the two counselors at the very beginning get killed, how there's the like freeze frame zoom in.
Yes.
There's just something very I don't know what it is about it that I love, but it's just very old school.
Just
and it
those
just makes me very
70s,
happy.
early 80s type of like camera tricks where I hear you can do this.
Because it stops mid-stair fall, and I just wonder if it's like, well, the stunt went wrong here or something. You know?
Right. the glue came loose and he fell. Yeah. So then I feel like we waste no time and we get back to the other couple in the cabin, and Jason grabs the spear that we see kind of the kill from the other Jello film, which is, the Bay of Blood, whether it's meant to be or not. But noticeably, he grabs a rubber mask and puts it on. Yeah. Which is kind of interesting. Like, why did he choose to mask up for this?
I don't know. That's a little Michael Myers again. Like kick back to sort of like that playfulness where Michael Myers wearing the costume or the sheet. They did a whole thing where he's stabbed in the back. Like you see it really happen, and that version just doesn't exist. I don't know if it was just like the effect didn't look good, which will like much like the ending of the movie, the original ending of the movie, where they scrapped it because the effect didn't look good. Yeah, where you more like see it go through his naked back, and they did the whole like Kevin Bacon thing of him under the ground.
I think it was partially for the whole like avoiding a rated X.
That's true, because the MPAA really came at them with this, because getting so big and having this visceral hatred from Ebert and whatever. I'm sure the second one was under a lot of scrutiny. Yeah, and it's not so much. It's the combination of like a whole bunch of like pervasive, as they say, and with how famous it is. Like if this was just like some random like video nasty out of Britain, I'm sure it wouldn't have gotten the scrutiny, but because it was so famous, like you got to squeaky
cut it
wheel
in.
Gets the grease. Yeah. So it looks, evidently it was 48 seconds of the movie had to be cut to get an R rating. Wow.
And I would assume
that's got to be on there because that's probably a
good 6
effect.
or 7 seconds of the javelin to the back. Yeah, was what that is.
Yeah, so they're both dispatched, and then Vicky, having kind of like cleaned up because Terry has left the place a mess, I guess. Terry has also died by this point, by the way, because we don't see her death on screen because she comes back to Scott hang there after his throat has been cut and starts screaming, and then like turns to the camera at one point, and it's a little bit reminiscent of Steve's death of the first one, where it's this oh my gosh, and then again, another hard cut to a sweet guitar solo, but instead of a hot dog. Yeah. so we know that she's gone, and then Vicky goes back because she's looking for Mark because Mark isn't around. Right. She sees someone in the bed, can't figure out what's happening. And that's when Jason pops up from the bed.
And that is the first time that we see the Baghead. He's hiding in the bed with a sheet over him. So kind of a big reveal, we finally do get to see that, especially if you're watching this as a Friday the 13th fan and just being like, oh, what's part 2 all about? Where's the hockey mask type of thing? Yeah. This is the moment where you see the Baghead.
Yeah, this is more like evil hillbilly.
Yeah.
Which is interesting in its own way about like killing these city slickers. Right. Yeah, I realized that during that thing, I spent the whole time looking at his thumb. Because he's got like a jammed thumb or something like that. And I was like, I wonder what Jason did to his thumb. I hope it's okay.
Right. Yeah. Shack life.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so at this point, Ginny is heading back with Paul, not knowing what they're going to find. And much like the first one, they find a bed. Instead of an axe being tucked in, it's just covered in blood. Right. The movies are kind of structured similarly, and then it all just kicks off.
Kind of like what you were saying earlier, like Jason has stacked these bodies, like the other guy's bodies in the closet. But then it quickly, like, the bodies are gone, too. Yes. Then we get Jason attacking Paul And this is where it like clued me into like, Jason ain't that big, you know? He's normal sized guy. And I don't care that much. It's just, I'm just comparing it to the future sequels. And when you see him struggling with another 20 something guy, it's just like, Jason's not that big yet.
Yeah. He hasn't started taking his weight gain powder.
Right.
But I do like that because she's like, there's someone in here because he's just sitting in there waiting for them.
Yes.
Again, just careful hatred, just being a weirdo. Yeah, attacks her. She runs away. There's a chasing that happens, and this movie in general, I think like you can see the extended budget not in any like gigantic way, but other than the camera actually like moves and does stuff.
Yes.
Whereas the first one was really kind of like, well, we just kind of set it up and do it. And yes, there's some stalking stuff like that, but this chase is a lot more sort of alive and kinetic.
And he's using the pitchfork at that point.
Yes, he's chasing with a pitchfork. And then this is, I feel so terrible because Amy Steele and Adrian King, I had the opportunity to see both the first two of these movies back to back at the wonderful Hollywood Theater here in Portland, Oregon. And they were in attendance. They had amazing stories to tell. And all I could remember, really, Amy Steele talking about the scene where she's hiding under the bed from Jason and the rat crawls in front of her.
Yes.
And the pee.
Yeah.
That she's like, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be my pee, the rat's pee. It's a lot of pee. That's Coca-Cola.
Wow.
They use Coke. And so that's all I'm remember from that is like, Coca-Cola, taste the feeling.
Yeah, I'm just like, look, luckily I've not been in that situation.
Yeah.
And maybe I would do the same, but like, that's quite a plot point, you know?
No, I generally, I avoid my bowels for me and nobody else.
Right, exactly.
So I can't speak to how this works, but yeah, it's a lot of pee.
Yeah, so Jason sees the said pee.
Well, she has been drinking, so that makes sense.
There you go. Right. Yeah. See what happens?
Yeah.
But I do love this, though, because Jason rears up. He's standing on a table, and it just collapses out from under him, which is pretty great. Again, it kind of reminds me of like what they took and ran with the Scream franchise, where like Ghostface is kind of a klutz, which is kind of great.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, well, that it is like that. Jason is still human in this for being this sort of like specter of vengeance. He's still just like a guy
who'll break a table.
Yeah,
and then she gets a chainsaw, which is great.
Yes, which we've seen her use once already. She's just like carving up some firewood.
Of course, we got to establish it. Got the chainsaw, and I will say, Jason looks legitimately scared in this shot. Like, you can see his eyes through the Baghead, and his body language is kind of impressive. Like, again, this is only part 2, but is he scared ever again, I wonder?
I don't know, because he, at this point, for all that we know about him, is that he's not used to confrontation, really.
Fighting back, fair enough.
He's like, I will sneak up on you and do this stuff. And this is like, so imagine Jason is playing D&D and he's a rogue. And he's like, he's big on backstabbing.
Right.
But he fucked up his role. And so now he's like, I don't actually know what to do here because this is I'm not spec'd for this. Like I'm a glass cannon. And she actually beat my stealth roll. Crap.
Right.
So I think he's kind of surprised because I mean he tussled with Paul a little bit, but everything else up until this is just him surprising people and murdering them.
Right.
And particularly to have a young woman fight back too. He does not know what to do.
Exactly. And obviously it's great to see the crossover chainsaw weapon in the movie. But then she leaves it and flees into the woods. You know? I get it. I mean, I probably couldn't run with the chainsaw very far either. But this is where I start to really like this movie in a way, just because I like going to a new creepy place in a climax instead of just running around the camp, you know?
Yeah.
And going to the shack, which we have yet to really explore.
Yeah.
So she runs through the woods, and I swear she runs through the same like little clearing like 2 or 3 times. But fair enough. You know, you just you reuse your shots.
Yeah. Just frame it slightly different. It's fine.
Right. And she finds the Jason shack, and she finds the shrine to Pamela, which I love.
Yes.
I love the shrine to Pamela in here.
But that like I have several questions about the shrine.
Yes, of course.
So it appears like, because when she locks it from the inside, it appears like that's designed to do that.
Sure.
What's that about?
Yeah.
That the mind reels at what's going on there. who is the very desiccated body there? Is that supposed to be Alice?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I don't think you see that until because you see that in that first initial shot. Because I scrubbed back a few times to be like, what do we see? Because I think the body, the body of the cop is different at the end. I think it's just like a different, because they shot it later. I think it's just like it's dressed differently, whatever. Because
there's a few different bodies in there.
Because you don't see what happens to Scott's body, and this is what I was saying earlier about like the things in the movie that if you think about, just to move on, he's brought Terry there.
Mm-hmm.
None of the other counselors, as far as we know, they've generally like stayed in the houses where they were, whatever. But he took Terry, the woman who this entire time has just been coded as sex object.
Right.
He took her back, her dead body. You see the when you first see it, and you see the head, which really grabs your eye, and then there's some bodies lying around. It's fun, but it wasn't until during the scuffle later where she knocks the knife out of his hand, and it lands by Terry. I'm like,
sure,
Terry's. Why is Terry there?
Why is she there? Yeah.
So I'm just don't want to think about it. Moving on.
Yep, we'll move on from there.
Because like it makes sense that the cop would be there because the cop got murdered there.
Of course,
and, but it seems like it's maybe just these are bodies he's piling up to in sacrifice to his mother.
Sacrifice, yeah.
But like this is look what I'm doing for you, Mom. I'm such a good boy.
Exactly, yeah. And I do like the look of it. Of course, it's got candles and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's got Pamela's head, and then the sweater is delicately laid out. Like the neck of the sweater connects to the head, which is great. And all this time, Jason is trying to like hack his own way back into his own shack, which is fun.
I love the shot of when she gets in the shack of just there's a tiny little window and you see him running towards the house.
I did see that.
It's not anything super stylish or just fantastic, details. But it's a nice little shot, and I really enjoyed that.
Right. And then he makes his way in, and Jenny with the brains here puts on Pamela's sweater and ruffles her hair. Like she takes a second to look at the decapitated head. Be like, I can do that hairstyle.
But this rules because it's very much, you took a Psych 101 class and this is how you think psychology works.
Yes.
It does work.
And it does work. So she puts on Pamela Voorhees' nasty sweater, which is so good.
This is such a wild leap to make. Right. Like, okay, well, here's all these other bodies lying around. There's a head here with the sweater.
Yep.
That's obviously his mother. And I'm sure if I put on a sweater and talk like her, he's 100% going to buy it.
Yeah.
But you as the audience are like, yeah, that's absolutely what's going to happen.
This works because, maybe she's also smart enough just to be like, I can't overpower this guy.
Yeah.
Look at a bunch of bodies. This is the dice I'm going to roll.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she says,
Jason! It's all done, Jason. You've done your job well, and Mommy is pleased. That's a good boy. Now come to Mommy. Come on. Come on. Mommy has a reward for you.
They brought back Betsy Palmer for this, which is great. And just as creepy. Even though it's supposed to be like loving, she's still just very,
she's
very
still
creepy.
Great. Yeah. There is a scuffle because after a while, Jason kind of like starts to see through it a little bit.
Yeah, because she moves and he sees the head behind her. Wait a minute.
Well, there's two heads of my mom. And then, Paul appears and there's some scuffling with Paul again.
Yeah, things get weird here.
This is a little bit hard. Yeah.
So she actually, this is a behind the scenes thing that I like, where she's supposed to do a thing where she comes at Jason with a machete, and he's supposed to block it with the head of a pickaxe.
Right.
And in doing it, that didn't work out because there were two different Jasons. The second Jason being Steve Dash, who was more like he did the stunts.
Right.
Because the first guy, Warrington Gillette, that's
a great name.
Yeah, that's a villain in a movie about a yacht race.
Yeah, right.
But he was Jason. That he didn't move the pick in time, and so she ended up hitting him in the hand. It was enough he had to go get stitches. Ooh. And when he went in to go get stitches, he had the prosthetic on that was the machete through the shoulder.
Oh, funny.
And when he went in, he was like, "Do you have something for a headache?" But turns out it was just a thing on his hand. But Pro came back, did the stunts. There's a scuffle with Paul. She and Paul escape to because they think they put him down. Because she hits him with the machete from the back on the shoulder.
Yeah, and they remove his bag. But the camera doesn't
The
show.
The camera doesn't show it. They're just like, oh,
Right.
let's look what this Batman really looks like.
Right.
Paul carries her back to the cabin. They're still shaken up. Then there's a noise at the door, and it's Muffin.
Yeah.
But we've seen Muffin get already eviscerated before.
Yeah. Justice for Muffin.
And then she's like, what the hell? Slow-mo Jason leaps through the window. There's Jason Bagoff, so you're going to see the grown-up Jason with the prosthetics and looking all weird. Very slow-mo, and then just flash to white.
It's a great shot.
Yeah.
But it's... Yeah.
Yeah, and she's being carted away by a paramedic. And this makes a little bit more sense than the first one, because the first one, everyone's dead. How would the cops have even been called?
Right.
This one, we know half the cast went to the bar, so they come back, see this. But she's coming back and is going, where's Paul? Where's Paul? There's no answer to that. And then it dissolves to Pamela Voorhees' head, freeze frame. And this was, the original ending was that the head was supposed to smile slightly, indicating that he killed Paul.
And I just, anytime this kind of shot happens in a movie, I just go right to Mystery Science Theater and his eyes open.
Yeah.
And his eyes open.
Yeah.
And his eyes open.
Clearly, particularly you're like, that's someone wearing makeup. That is absolutely someone wearing makeup. Okay, do something.
Yep.
And then it doesn't happen. Because apparently they thought the effect didn't look very good.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of speculation in the fandom about what happened to Paul. And there was a shot on the back of like a DVD cover, like release of a DVD that had like Paul looking like his mouth was open, looking maybe he was dead. And they're like, that's proof. That was from the unused scene, because that scene of her slides, they're like, it's proof that happened. He's dead. Ron Kurz has said, my intention was, yes, that you were going to see this light tussle, and then she would wake up and be like, where's Paul? And then the head would smile, indicating that, yeah, Paul was dead. But because that didn't happen, because the shot kind of didn't work out the way they wanted it to, who knows?
Yeah, she gets carted off. Paul's gone. Jason's just gone. Like, why did Jason not just kill her right there? Why did he leave her alive?
Well, did any of that happen? Because Muffin saw, we clearly saw Muffin dead. It'd be very weird to have a same dog like that. So it starts being like, well, at what point did this stop being real? Did she have some kind of psychotic break or something? Yeah. And I mean, a better movie might have an answer for it. This doesn't. This just goes, you decide. You figure it out.
Yeah. So
who knows?
Right.
But all we know is that she's alive. And
she's alive. That's
all we need to know.
She's a great final girl. Like, I think, like we've already discussed, I think she did a pretty fantastic job. I wish she would have gotten a little bit more of a final scuffle. Well, I mean, she did get a final scuffle.
But not without Paul,
I guess. Yeah, there you go.
She definitely, she can hold her own. More so, I mean, she's a more fleshed out character than Alice was. Yeah. And that's in no fault to Adrian King, but they just decided to actually try to have a character.
So I guess now we will go to the funeral segment. Alice L. Hardy, played by Adrian King. Head stabbed by an ice pick. Ralph, played by Walt Gorney, strangled with barbed wire. Deputy Winslow, by Jack Marks, head stabbed with a claw hammer. Scott, played by Russell Todd, throat slashed with a machete. Mark, played by Tom McBride, machete to the face. Jeff, played by Bill Randolph, back impaled with a spear. Sandra, played by Marta Kober, chest impaled with a spear. Vicky, played by Lauren Marie Taylor, stabbed repeatedly with a knife.
Raise a glass to all these brave souls who got murdered by a guy in a pillowcase.
Right. So yeah, that's Friday the 13th Part 2.
I left the first one going, well, how the hell are they going to make this into a franchise? And this one, I'm like, why did they do this?
Well, and also, he goes down with a machete in the back, but there's ways to come back from that, which we'll see. So yeah, in a couple of weeks we'll tackle Part 3
in 3D.
3D. Oh my god, yeah. spoiler, I like this one. This
Well,
is a good, fun
we will
one.
have things to talk about with this one.
Yes.
Unlike this movie where we just sat in silence. But no, there's a lot in part 3 that's kind of amazing. There's so much about just their full-throated yes to 3D.
Exactly. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
All right. Well, we will see you all in a couple of weeks for Friday the 13th Part 3 as we continue. And talk to you then.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Good night. This has been a Two Penguins media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling. And music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find at Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thiswillhurtabitpod and on Twitter at hurtabit. Email us at thiswillhurtabitpod@gmail.com. And if you're so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.